Huh? What were we doing? Oh, right. In our broader discussion of horror, we were talking about if PS1 horror is still effective. So in the previous video, we talked about Silent Hill, one of my favorite classic horror games. To catch you up to speed, Silent Hill is still an excellent horror experience because of things like atmosphere and sound design. Anyway, since statistically most of you guys are weebs, you don't need this introduction, but Silent Hill was developed in Japan. When it comes to horror, I've always admired the Japanese approach. They've got a slightly different methodology with how things are done. You've got the titan of horror manga, Junji Ito, bringing fear to ordinary things like spirals, or evil little girls, or cyborg land sharks. Can you imagine being afraid of an ordinary commonplace thing like that? But they've also got incredible cinematic horror experiences like The Ring, The Grudge. They've got body horror covered with Tetsuo the Iron Man. We've got absolutely bizarre experiences that will leave you shaken and bewildered, not certain if you're afraid or crazy with movies like Hausu. Or movies that are just plain scary, like Noroi, which I will still not watch alone, even as a grown man, to this very day. So, in my quest to determine if PS1 horror can still deliver the spooks 20-something years later, I wondered where to search next, and it occurred to me to look to the east. I thought, how about Sunrise Land? Surely they've got something for me on the PS1. And indeed, enter Iru. This is a 1998 horror title for the PS1, and it actually was never released in the West. I'm only able to play it because of the efforts of an intrepid translator that's brought this game to the English-speaking population at large. So, thanks, Snowy Aria. At least, I think it was you. If it's not, So, we'll dive into the details in a second, but broadly described, Iru is a first-person horror adventure game. You'll wander the halls of a spooky high school that's mysteriously built on an island and uncover a horrific mystery. Or die trying. But first, I gotta go undercover. My current garb isn't exactly appropriate for Japanese high school, and I have to blend in. I'm a man of the cloth, but monk's clothing will raise too much suspicion here. No, too scary. We're gonna have to go with the classic. Anyway, I'm the Doom Prophet, and let's take a look at Iru. And yes, there is a Jojo reference in this video, so stick around to the end. Okay, with my disguise complete, let's get down to business. This game is pretty short, so we're basically gonna cover the whole thing. Alright, title screen. So I guess Iru means they're here, a statement which doesn't mean a whole lot to us right now, but great title screen. I'm digging the music. Let's see if these things are representative of the overall quality of the game. When we actually start, we're shown a dream sequence slash premonition slash vision that the main character Inaba seems to be having. This girl that's in danger warns us that those who follow the heretical teachings seek to awaken an ancient evil that's sealed on the island, which is apparently where we are. And just by coincidence, we're the only one she could reach? Is she sending telepathic messages? Is she dead? Well, not to worry, ma'am. Ancient evil is sort of my specialty. We're then awoken by another girl, Yuma. It's me, a Japanese high schooler, definitely not a 20-year-old man. Yuma informs us that we gotta get our ass in gear and finish up preparations for some sort of school festival. But our classmates that are supposed to be helping us have vanished. Oh, I'm controlling now. So, as mentioned earlier, this is a first-person game, and remember kiddos, there was a time when controllers didn't have analog sticks. Way back in dinosaur times, before people were selling $200 controllers, or controllers with the Hall effect, there was the D-pad. Now, the DualShock was actually already available, but it wasn't yet the standard, so this game has to somehow have first-person controls with no analog sticks and no mouse. and frankly, is not pretty. You control moving forward and backwards with D-pad up and down. D-pad left and right will turn you, L1 and R1 will strafe you, and L2 and R2 look up and down. It's disgusting, but we'll come to find that the game isn't exactly demanding precise commands from you, so we'll just have to put up with it. Stop. Yeah, we've only been playing for like 5 seconds, but it's time for a compare and contrast. Let's recall how Silent Hill starts. A terrifying sequence where we go into an alley straight out of the film Jacob's Ladder, and then Harry gets accosted by knife gremlins. The intro sequence for Iru is doing arts and crafts for a school festival. Does this make it worse horror? Well, not necessarily. Many horror films, in fact, probably the majority of them, typically have a beginning sequence of normal life. This serves as a way to contrast when the horror does happen later on. Okay, carry on for now. Now, the game is going to introduce a bunch of characters way too fast. The art teacher Hojo comes and steals away Yuma, and Yuma tells us to go find our other classmates. Okay. Aikawa, Yuma, Hojo, Mochizuki, and Hirose. Okay. We got our game plan, so let's jump. And whoa, as soon as we leave the classroom, the music takes a dark turn. There's nothing really to indicate that we're in a horrific situation yet, but it doesn't seem like the music got the memo. Then we bump into another random girl with possible romantic ties to someone named Kazuki? Okay. Misa? Kazuki? Oh no, sorry, you meant Hikawa. Oh, okay, no, he went to the career center with Yuma, Ichinomiya. Alright, so as we're walking around exploring the school, we find Hirose. Now, as you can see from this graph, the fat positivity movement hadn't happened yet in 1998, so Hirose ends up being the butt of the joke. We ask him to help finish our work, but he's feeling too hungry to move right now, so we're off to find our other pal. On the way, we bump into Hikawa. It turns out this guy's the resident jerk of the school. He's blocking our path in preparation for tomorrow, whatever that means. As we explore, we come to find that someone or something has closed all of the fire shutters, so for whatever reason, we're trapped on the top floor of the school right now. By the way, 95% of this game takes place in this school. Here's a rough map for you. Now, due to all the locked fire shutters and the way you open progression, navigating becomes quite irritating. To get to this point, from this point, which should just be going down the stairs, I have to travel along this path. And this, and other such nonsense, is eventually going to grind on you. We bump into Mori, another teacher. Finally, we find Mochizuki by stumbling into an exchange with him and Hojo. Mochizuki's investigating the disappearance of his older brother several years ago, and he thinks Hojo might know something about him. Intrigue. As we're wandering around exploring the school, we find that it's a very detailed world. You can interact with a lot of stuff, and that stuff looks pretty good. So with that said, it's time to talk about the graphics. So, since everyone knows you can't enjoy retro graphics without a CRT TV, and since all retro YouTubers have one, I decided to get one for myself. Look at this beaut. The image is real crispy, I promise. Let's boot it up. I'm just kidding. Thanks to the members supporting this channel, I had the courage to go dumpster diving and rescue this one. Thanks for having my back, members. It's because of your support that videos like this are possible. So, the graphics by my estimation are actually pretty nice for the time. If you compare it to other things that came out the same year, it starts to look worse. In fact, there's a very similar game that came out the same year that arguably looks way better. But there's detail in the environment and characters in Iru, and everything is lightly anime styled. Like last time with Silent Hill, I've tried to mix footage with upscaling and original resolution together. Now, an interesting point of contrast and a little tidbit that I didn't get to in the Silent Hill video. So, many of you probably know by now, but Silent Hill's infamous fog is actually due to the processing limitations of the PS1. In a playtest, players complained that it looked ugly when things that were past a draw distance just disappeared into blackness. So, the devs of Silent Hill threw in the fog to obscure this, and boom! The iconic fog of Silent Hill was born. Now, in Iru, you can't exactly have fog inside of a school, so there's nothing to disguise the PS1's poor draw distance. Instead, you just have hallways and corridors disappearing into inky blackness, which is actually pretty creepy on its own. Also, look at this, real-time reflections. There are games made in this year that don't have that. All in all, I'm impressed by the presentation here, and I would happily play games that look like this even in this year because I think it's got a charming art style. Anyway, now we go tell Misa Hikawa's a two-timing slut, then we stumble on a very awkward scene. Now, by horror movie rules, we know that this dude is not making it to the end. But he gives us a weird line. She's mine in more ways than one? Huh. Then we take like 2 more steps and see this scene where Mr. Douchebag is bullying Hirose into doing his chores or something. So at this point I'm getting kind of a sinking feeling. Maybe it's just a slow start, but there hasn't really been any gameplay. So far the game is walk to location X, watch a scene, proceed to location Y, and watch another scene.
Where the video games?
Not great, but let's see what happens. After finishing up the Hirose scene, then we get principal jump scared. And we find that I guess since we've advanced the story, some locations that were previously locked have now opened up. A recurring theme in this game. We're introduced to more characters that are inexplicably crushing on the main character. Rie? Kyoko? Nakanishi? Yeah, I'm sick of this. There's too many characters with too many names. And spoilers, they all die. Okay, so then we walk in on a scene where the other teacher, Mr. Mori, seems to be threatening Hojo, implying that he has some weird dirt on her. So, who are the good guys in this story? What is happening? Hey, you zoned out yet? I sure did. I bet you forgot this is supposed to be a horror game. Sure seems like a drama so far. Meanwhile, some weird stuff seems to be happening with Mochizuki. He appears to be blacking out with no memory of what transpired, and we keep finding these weird notes left lying around. Oh, and you better be walking around with a magnifying glass out, because there's a lot of stuff you need in this game that's just lying on the ground with nothing really to call attention to it. Suddenly, the power goes out. Alright, classic horror, we're finally rolling. Now, while the power's out, this game actually has top-notch atmosphere. It's genuinely super creepy to wander around an empty school. It almost veers into liminal territory, and the PS1 graphics are hitting that uncanny sweet spot. Now, couple this with the cramped first-person perspective making everything feel claustrophobic, and you have a couple of minutes of pure tension, wondering if something is following you just outside your field of view. But it never comes. Here's probably the scariest thing in the whole game. Remember those 2 art girls? Well, one's possessed now. Sadly, there are no organic scares in this game. I wish I could tell you that this was a hidden gem that will scare your pants off. Some cursed Japanese-only relic that's scarier than getting a letter from the IRS. But no. The excellent atmosphere, music, and horror environment are all in place for the scary slam dunk. But the dunk never comes. There are just these heavily scripted sequences where the horror takes place. So take this possessed girl for example. We're forced to run into this particular room and all we can do is hide in the box. In fact, during all these sequences, your choices are either to hide in one obvious place or die. Anyway, right after this we find Hirose and he meets his untimely demise as he's sucked dry by some otherworldly creature. Mochizuki gives us a lore dump and guess what? This game's actually Lovecraft inspired. Yep, ironically by looking to the east I've come right back to the west. We come to find that Mochizuki is temporarily being possessed by some cosmic traveler who is able to give us the skinny on these otherworldly creatures. These are actually time dogs that live in the past, and if you ever look into the past to see them, which I guess is possible with this handy dandy mirror, they'll become angry and pursue you until the end of time. Pretty cool lore actually. Now, I'm not the biggest Lovecraft buff, so I don't know if this is a real thing, but maybe it is? I don't know, tell me in the comments. And you can totally get a completely voluntary game over by interacting with the mirror here. Also, there's a cool little sequence where you can read The King in Yellow. Now, I know Lovecraft and Lovecraft tangential things like The King in Yellow are popular now because of the internet, but this is 1998, so I gotta give credit to the devs for knowing their stuff. They must have been true horror fans. However, there is a problem with Lovecraft, and that's showing it. A lot of the stuff in Lovecraft's horror is never really meant to be seen, especially with PS1 graphics. Once you've seen the shoggoth and the time dogs, any pretense of them being scary sort of flies out the window. After this point, it pains me to say it, but the game pretty much blows its chance of being scary. In my opinion, horror is a lot more effective when your imagination is doing the heavy lifting. Remember earlier when I said the power goes out and the cramped first-person perspective is making you worry if something is just outside of your peripherals? To me, that's great horror. At that point in the game, I have no idea what could happen, so my own mind is betraying me, coming up with scary hypotheticals. This game just drops these three goofball-looking monsters in front of you. These two can't even kill you, they just block your path. And this one you have to ask it nicely and it'll give you a game over. There's no immediacy either. I can just walk around and deal with it at my convenience. So, with the pretense of horror gone, this game is now a silly adventure, I guess? Also, sadly after this, the game just becomes a complete slog. Either I'm too stupid to understand context clues, or the game just completely lacks direction. There's no real gameplay besides finding the next scene that advances the plot, so from this point on, you'll be walking into every room of the school over and over again, and you can't ignore doors that were previously locked because sometimes they'll just open when the time is right. Come on, guys, let me in. Look, I can play the Song of Storms like that guy from Majora's Mask. Let me in! You guys are being so uncool. It's time for Bid Breakdown, the game show where we calculate just what it takes to put entertainment in front of your eyeballs. Here we have an XXL button down for the growing boy, $29.99. The cheapest belt in the store, $19.99. Monarch accordion, $2,500, but the shame of knowing how to play an accordion is lifelong. And this hair! Well, that's priceless. There's some very light puzzling here to keep you sort of entertained, which is more or less just take this object and put it somewhere else. Here's one puzzle for example. Take this picture of the principal from the art room and put it in the principal's office. But mostly the next 4 hours or so, I walk into every room and click on every door until the next thing happens. I think with a guide you could probably speedrun the rest of the game in less than 30 minutes. In fact, that's what we're gonna do. Full disclosure, I'm getting tired of editing this video, but everything to follow really can be done in just a few minutes, minus the aimless wandering. We find Misa dead. We feed the shoggoth for some reason. More dead people. Run away from the Fishman of Innsmouth. Mori gets killed by the principal. Fishman eats more guys. Mochizuki lore dump. Everyone here is trying to free the ancient deity that's been sealed under the island, and to do it they need the special bloodline of that girl from the dream or Yuma, who are also coincidentally related to the principal. Oh hey, it's the chapel from the intro dream sequence. And no, that's not just a weird PS1 texture scene. You're supposed to know to put a jewel there that opens up a secret room. Navigate a weird checkerboard maze to get said jewel. Make the statue cry. Distill those tears into a powder. Yuma gets kidnapped. Go back to the secret room and mix the powder of Ibn Ghazi. Evil principal! Ikawa throws us underground. Which is where the last 5% of the game takes place, and he tells us we have to unseal the ancient evil to save Yuma. Indiana Jones spike ceiling trap. Whoops, we unsealed an elder god. Down here we find Mochizuki's brother. By coincidence, finding him and talking to him gives you the true ending of the game, which is pretty cool to do by accident. Turns out, he and Hojo had a scandalous teacher-student love affair, and also studied heretical teachings. And when he turned on Hojo because he grew conscious, she threw him in here. But it's cool, because he got transformed into a ghoul. And he's chill with his new life as a ghoul. So Hojo was an evil witch the whole time. Who could have seen that coming? We find the real principal, turns out the evil one is a golem. Then, we begin ascending a stone tower, which inexplicably leads to the top of the school. On the way, both Mochizuki and Ikawa die. Then, we get to the top. Is this the work of an enemy stand? Hojo, you witch! Create a gig! Then we get the good, true ending of the game, where the main character and Yuma both get PTSD and never see each other again? Nothing like a happy ending, I guess. So yeah, that was Iru. All said and done, it's a unique experience, and one that I'm conflicted on. There's a lot that I really love about it, and it's clear that there was passion from the devs here, but also, it's basically a visual novel where instead of pressing A, you have to rub yourself in every wall and door until you see the next event. If there was just a little more gameplay or some scares that weren't scripted, I feel like this could have been a cult classic. So then, I started imagining, what if this game was remade today? Could it be remade scarier? Then, the jaded cynic in me started imagining harder. It would probably just be one of those games where a JPEG chases you down a hallway. So, I had a graphic design artist make one of those spooky JPEGs, and we used yours truly as a base. So, let's do a little simulation of what Iru might look like if remade today. It's got the atmosphere, music, and tension ready to go. Let's just add a little spice. Well, thanks for joining me on this little journey, and thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Join me in the next video where maybe we'll play something that's a little more appropriate for analyzing and dissecting horror. Drop by the streams and say hi. Maybe become a member for special members-only streams with thrilling gameplay. Everyone's just like, no, Mario Party is like Nintendo's shovelware console. Oh, something's happening. And behind-the-scenes content. Like, comment, subscribe, maybe share this with your friends. See you next time. Doom Prophet out. Alright, video done, and only 2 weeks late. But I can't help but think I'm forgetting something. Oh well, time to grab some Taco Bell and talk to myself out loud more.